But I am encouraged by my eyeballing because this pin, you'll notice, is closer to this arm seam, where this is just a little bit further away because my logo is off center. So this place that I've kind of eyeballed is closer to this edge. My pin is going to be closer to this edge over here, just like it is up higher, so that means I'm on the right track with my measurements. So I'm going to lay this down, and when you use a rotary cutter, you always need what's called a self-healing mat underneath, so I'm going to use that, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to move my t-shirt up just a little bit so that my entire line of cutting is going to be have a mat underneath it, and I'm just going to kind of line this up. So I did want that 3 inches away. So that looks pretty good. So that's a little off of where my pin was. So I'm gonna kind of shimmy that out a little bit. Alright, so I have my rotary blade. Oh, that's a little bit loose. I'm going to just tighten that up a little bit. The blade side, so this is kind of the side that doesn't have the cover and stuff, that's a way my blade is going to be in contact directly with my sewing ruler as I do this cut line. So I'm going to start just a teeny bit before where my fabric is so I can put some pressure on it, and I'm just going to go up to the top of where my mat ends, and you can see that was cut perfectly in a straight line. I'm going to do this other side over here, and then I'm going to move on. Now I do want to double check and make sure, because that pin I shifted over a little bit, yeah. So we're going to be just barely over from where that was. Take that out. Okay. So I'm slightly ambidextrous and feel comfortable using a rotary cutter with my left and right hand. You may not, so you might be standing on the other side of the table to slice it this way, but anyway, I mean, of course it functions the same way whether you use it with your right hand or left hand, so that's kind of handy. Alright, and we have that side off. So I'm going to come right over here, and you can see on my grid that it lines up pretty nicely with that line and this line right here, so that's good. I'm going to lay this right here, and I'm actually going to use these grid lines now as my straight liners, and I'm going to slice across here. Okay, so my t-shirt is coming apart while my project is coming together. I'm going to slide this down just a little bit so that it's all on the mat. And I actually need to go up a teeny bit higher on these cuts. I couldn't quite because the mat ended, to get even with that neckline. So I'm going to set this on here, line it up with my straight edge, and go just a tad bit further. Actually, I'm going to just try to slice all that off. That makes sense. And then same thing over here. Slice that right off. Okay. Now that will make it much easier for me to go straight across up here. So I'm going to lay my ruler down. I'm really just going to like snuggle it up right close to that stitching line, and then on my mat I have little dots here that are also helpful for marking lines, and I'm just going to make sure that that looks as straight as I can get it, and slice it off. Okay, and there we go. So we have our t-shirt cut out, okay, in the size that we want. It's not an exact measurement, or at least I don't require you to have an exact measurement for it, so this is looking good so far, and we'll move to the serger for our next step. If you've done the method that I did, where there was the logo preservation, you're going to need to do one step to catch up to the point where everybody else is. So if you did the version where you cut it out of the side underneath the sleeves, then you already have one side that is stitched together. And so we're going to do that for those of us who cut it out of the top of our shirt, and then we'll all be on the same stage and we can do all the same things together. So I'm going to put my pieces right sides together. So I'm gonna peel that up and place these right sides together. So I'm going to line up my edges, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to serge one long edge. Okay, so I'm not serging the top or the bottom. My logo is up here, and I'm going to serge the side, one side together. Knit, as you will discover quickly, which t-shirts are made out of, can curl quite easily, so you got to be kind of on top of it to make sure that it's not curling. And we're going to stick this in the serger. We don't use pins with the serger. With the sewing machine, if your needle kind of goes over a pin, it's maybe not the end of the world. It could break your needle. It's not the end of the world. With a serger, if you let a pin get past you, your knife is right here and it will damage your knife. Okay, so we don't use pins with the sergers. That means either you kind of eyeball it and go as slow as you can with the serger and kind of make it work, or you can also choose to do a basting stitch on your sewing machine, which is definitely a good idea, especially if you're feeling a little bit nervous about keeping your lines together. It will create a neater product. I'm not going to do that just because of the experience I have with sewing. I feel confident that I can keep my edges straight and together while I'm serging. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and I'll see you on the other side. There we go. You can see when I serge, I let my knife just cut off the chain. It's tucked under there now, but anyway, obviously I'll have to go and trim them with scissors later, but that's kind of a speedy way to do that. So I have my edge done. Now, if whatever method you did, we're now all on the same page where we have this big rectangle that's quite wide and pretty tall. We're going to do some marking on the top now for our casing and our buttonholes and things. So I'm going to take you back over to the table to show you that. Started recording yet, evidently. Okay. Okay, so we're going to make the casing now, and what that is it's a casing is something that holds a drawstring or elastic. So I've cut off my little bull horns. Okay, So what we're going to do to make our casing is we're going to fold over our top edge 1.5 inches. So, and you're going to fold it to the wrong side. So I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to fold this down, I should say, 1.5 inches. And I'm definitely covering up my bowl, and I'm getting to where I'm gonna squish. I'm gonna hide a little bit of my logo right there. So I'm going to use my seam gauge, I think, and we're going to measure this 1.5 inches, and we're gonna, whoopsies, oh boy. Okay. All right, we're going to make a casing, which is a hollow tube basically that holds drawstring or elastic. So we're going to fold the top edge down. I'm looking at the wrong side. So if you did the method with the logo preservation, you're going to have a seam down here. If you did it under the sleeve, you're not going to have a seam here. It's just going to be one continuous rectangle, or you may have a seam that the shirt manufacturers made. So we're going to fold down this top edge 1.5 inches, and you'll be able to see right now what I meant with my logo being too close. That actually might be 2 inches. It's just right there at the top, and I'm going to end up doing a stitching method that'll probably catch just a little of it, but that's okay. So I'm going to measure along here and make sure I've got 1.5 inches all the way across. Knits can sometimes be a little funky with your pins, so it might take a little more finesse than usual, but I'm just going to muscle them in. That I should trim. Too wide. Okay. That's a long pin. Bye-bye, little bowl. You are not going to be seen. Alright, so I have my lovely casing folded down 1.5 inches. Now, if you do not have a seam here, so it's like a little bit vague what this center is, you're going to fold this in half and mark your exact center between these two pieces. Because I have a seam where I literally sew these together, my seam is the center. So if you need to mark that, go ahead and mark that with your sewing marker. Again, you're just going to fold this right in half and then mark your center right there. Alright, from the right side of your fabric, so your casing is still folded down and pinned, and we're looking at the right side of the fabric. Ooh, that's close. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark 2 buttonholes 1/4 1/4 inch away from your center. So you either have this marked with a marker or you have a seam here, and you're going to mark a buttonhole 1/4 inch away on each side. So they're going to be 2, okay, right here, evenly spaced away from your center line. So I'm going to use this, and I'm actually going to take that pin out because it's in my way. So I'm going to look at 1/4 inch, and first I'm just going to mark a dot that's 1/4 inch away from the seam with my seam gauge. And then my buttonhole should be about 5/8 of an inch long. So I'm going to mark the length now that I know how far away. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to center that. Mark a line 5/8 of an inch. Mark a line starting the same height, 5/8 of an inch. Okay, those are my 2 buttonhole markings. Now, doing a buttonhole on a knit fabric is a little bit tricky. It just can cause some problems, and students can have a difficult time with it. So, we have some interfacing provided for you, which is basically webbing that ours happens to be fusible, so that means that you're going to use an iron to place it behind the buttonholes to add some additional structure. So I'm just going to flip this over. When you stitch your buttonholes, okay, you are going to lift this piece and do your buttonholes only through one layer, okay? You are not doing your buttonholes through both casing pieces, okay? We just needed to know exactly where our casing was so that our buttonholes would be within that, okay? And that's the easiest way to do it. So, what you're going to do is you are going to open this up, and behind where your marking lines are, so I can actually see mine through my t-shirt, so behind where your marking lines are, you're going to attach fusible interfacing. So you're going to put a little rectangle of it right smack dab over where your lines are marked, okay, except for they're marked on this side, but you're going to put those there. You're going to use your iron, hold it on there, okay, it's called a press. Press it on there. Let the teeny little glue dots melt onto your t-shirt, okay? I will show you an example of that on a separate piece of fabric, and then I will be back to show you how to do the buttonholes. So I have my buttonholes done. They're only through that one layer of fabric. Have my buttonholes done. Now I'm going to serge the bottom and the last side together. So when you serge the side, you need your casing to be open, okay? Do not serge it like this, or you won't be able to get your drawstring through because you've just cut off the channel, okay? So I'm going to take out this pin and undo my serge, or my casing fold, so it's all the way up, and I'm going to serge down this side seam and then across, down the side seam and across the bottom, okay? Again, open the casing on the side before you serge it. Here we go. So I have the bottom and the side. You noticed I did a little loop method rather than the pivot. I find that it's just a little faster and a little less finicky, so to finish off this edge you would do it just like your regular serger tails with some fray check and trim it off. So I have a bag mostly and so this casing is going to fold back down for us to sew, and I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, so this last part and the way that we finish our casing requires that we actually disengage the knife of our serger. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to pop open my serger face, and there's this little knob here, and you simply pull it in. It's a spring. Okay, so you pull it to the right and then turn up and out of the way. Okay, so that's how you disengage the knife. Now it'll kind of click into place. Some sergers it kind of sticks straight up, this one it'll click back into place back behind, so it's out of our way. The reason why we're going to do that is because the way that we're going to finish this casing is a little different than you might think, and it can seem a little confusing if you're not paying attention. So you have your casing here. It's 1.5 inches around all sides. You're going to fold it back on itself like this to finish it. Okay, so you're going to serge around this edge, and then when it comes back up, that's still going to be on the inside, and you're going to have a nice little casing on the outside. It's kind of hard to imagine how this works, and students get a little confused with it, but you have your casing, you're looking at the wrong side of your bag, you fold the entire thing back in on itself so that this raw edge is even with this folded edge, and you're going to serge around that side. Now this is a step where it would be very helpful to baste. So do a long stitch on your sewing machine and you can baste around here. Okay. Our knife is disengaged, and when you start a loop of sewing, okay, you don't really have like a starting place, so you pick a spot and you kind of get it in there and line it up, and then you just kind of let it run onto the fabric back there. Okay, it's not going to look perfect because again you don't have a clean edge that you're starting from, but that's kind of the idea. So this is the right side of my bag, and this is how it looks on this side. Okay, so on the wrong side that I'm looking at, okay, wrong side of my fabric, I can't see the fold or anything, I just feel it back here. Now, one thing that basting will help you with is making sure that you're catching this edge and your folded edge. Okay, that can be tricky if you don't have experience with that. So I would recommend doing a basting stitch around here. Okay, just a reminder that we don't use pins with the serger. Okay, so I'm going to take my pins out and then we'll be back to show you how to stitch around. Alright, you'll notice as I serge that I have just stuck a few little clips strategically to help keep everything in line, but the biggest thing to watch out for is that you're catching both your raw edge here and your folded edge. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of tuck this under my presser foot, and I'm just going to go for it right here. And remember, there's no knife. You've disengaged your knife. So as you go around, you're just going to keep it flush with the edge of your stitch plate. Oh boy, okay. Well, it's stitching. Okay, we're back. Had a little serger snafu. Alright, so I'm back to where I started, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this off, and I'm going to put my bucket back on. And then I'm going to keep going past this little spot where I jumped on an inch or two, and then I'm just going to very quickly like pivot my fabric, turn it like this, and I'm just going to serge right off of it. You don't really want like a gradual leave of your fabric, because then you got like loops, 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 and if you try and trim those, then it's all frayed and stuff. So you go past where you started, and then you make a quick exit off of your line. This is when you're sewing a tube and you don't have a real stopping point. So I'm going to kind of show it to you. If you want to watch it again, you know, a couple times just to make sure you can see what I'm doing, feel free. So you can see I've stitched just a little bit past where I ended back there, and then I just really quickly made a 90-degree flip off of that. And then when you trim that, it's essentially flush. There's a little knob, and now you have that finished. Okay, there we have our bag. So you can see what I meant with my logo. It's barely there. Luckily the gap was kind of in the right spot, but it's going to be on the drawstring, so when I cinch that up, it's going to be hard to see. But there's your finished bag. And then my buttonholes are right here on the side, so they cinch this way, and I will show you a video of the best way to thread a drawstring through a casing. But you're almost there. Alright, so the last step is to thread whatever string or ribbon or shoelace or whatever that you have through your drawstring. You'll need a safety pin, and you're going to attach it to the end of whatever you're using. I've doubled this over because ribbon does fray over there, so I just want like a nice strong hold on there. I don't want it breaking off inside of this casing. So I'm going to start by sticking it through one of the holes. Okay, I'm just gonna tug it in there. Now the technique takes a little practice. Oh, hi, friend. Okay, so the technique takes a little practice. So you hold the back of your safety pin, and then you're going to kind of gather the fabric onto your safety pin, and then hold it with your right hand, and then it will pull through, okay? So you're just kind of going to continue that all the way through. Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you. When you get to a seam, it can be a little tricky to find your way through, but you just kind of gotta wiggle the end of yours. Wiggle the end of your sewing or safety pin till it gets through. Mama. Hi, I'm your mama. Oh, Dad. Dada's upstairs. I'm mama. I'm your mama. Dada. You silly. Dada. Got a little friend here. Okay, and then we come through this second hole. So, I've got my bags. I've got my bag. I've got my drawstring, so I just cinch that shut. And I have a nice shoe bag. Can stick shoes in it while I travel so they don't get my other things dirty. And that is the end of the repurposed bag.